Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 159, Reveals and Delays. This is a gaming podcast brought to you by me. Please take a moment to subscribe to and rate the podcast on whatever platform you listen to it on. If you are on YouTube, please comment below and like the video for the algorithm. You can even just say that for the algorithm. If you are on iTunes, please leave a review and share it with your friends. And be sure to let me know if you have any questions or topics for the next show by tagging me on Twitter, submitting them in the YouTube comments, or becoming a patron. On this week's episode, we will talk about Halo Infinite single player reveal, some Division updates, two relatively big ones, good and bad, Guardians of the Galaxy and Riders Republic review / thoughts, a Mass Effect Andromeda re-review-ish, and much, much more. So let's get on into it. Thank you to this month's Patreon supporters, PK, Uber Timmy, Hassan, Darren, Christian, Manmade Golf, and Renault. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/VonDiesel. The main benefit right now is that you do get these episodes a few days early, typically. Last, before we jump into the gaming news, please help me hit my Extra Life $1,000 fundraising goal for 2021 by donating on my Extra Life page, which should be in the description or comments below, joining my Patreon, where I will match the cost of your first month as a donation to the Extra Life campaign, or purchase merch from my Streamlabs merch store, and I will donate 2.5 times the profit, which is about $5 for each item, to the campaign. With the gaming news, we start off with Halo Infinite. We had a single player gameplay reveal. It was interesting, and the reception has been, I wouldn't say it's mixed. I think it's been positive, but you've definitely had a few people kind of chirping in, and we'll talk a bit about that. So what we got was a 6-minute single player review. This comes, after a few months of getting multiple, basically beta tests, or they call them flights, where we got to play the multiplayer a few times. And that went extremely well. That people really seemed to like it. I played it really extensively the second time and had an absolute freaking blast. I really, really, really enjoyed the PvP. It was a ton of fun. Both the big team battle and just the Slayer stuff that they showed, capture a flag and all that. It was very good. It felt like Halo, like I haven't really played since Halo 3, and it felt like that and more. So it was great. So, they have some good feelings from that. But people have been asking okay, where's the single player at? Because the last time you showed it, you delayed the game for a year, and you seem to be kind of hiding it. And we're like a month and a week away from release. So what's going on? And now we finally got at least a little bit of a touch of what's going on. So the video basically just shows a couple cinematics and then a decent amount of gameplay. Obviously, it's kind of the highlights of Master Chief doing all of his Master Chief things with his Master Chief voice. And it gives some clues to what the story is going to be, but it seems like it's going to involve Cortana, but we're mostly going to be interacting with this pilot that we'll be working with, and a thing called the Weapon, which is a fresh Cortana, basically, who is designed to take down Cortana, to shut her down. So I assume the idea of the game is going to be to track down Cortana, see what happened to her, and to try to shut her down. Something tells me it's not going to be that simple. So from what I saw, I was pretty impressed. I think it looks really good. Obviously, everyone's been doing the slow motion and screen capturing and doing comparisons and all of that. I think that's kind of useless, and it's the same thing that people did with the trailer even last year, where if you slow down and pause a compressed 1080p, 30 FPS YouTube video stream, it's just always going to look bad. And I'm not saying that the footage they showed last year looked great, but it didn't look as bad as I think it got made to look. But that is what it is. It does look a lot better now. There was a famous meme that came up called Craig from one of the NPCs from the trailer last year, where admittedly he was pretty basic. It didn't look great as one of the not one of the grunts. Uh, I don't know. I can't remember what he is exactly, but um, it was a problem. It didn't look great, and now people they gave us a few moments to really see Craig up close. And it looks like he's had quite the makeover, and it looks pretty good. The multiplayer looks really good, and in theory, the multiplayer should be lower asset quality than the multiplayer or than the single player, because it has to deal with other players. It has to, a lot of the bandwidth that the machines can do is dedicated to things other than just what you're seeing. There's other stuff going on there. So yeah, I thought the trailer looked great. They had their battlefield moment in there where Chief jumps out of the aircraft he's in, and shoots a spike at another aircraft and blows it up, and then uses his grapple hook to grab another one and kick the dude out and fly it away. There was another really funny moment too, where Master Chief clears out a camp and saves some Space Marines, and they jump into a Warthog with them, and he says, "You're safe now," as he drives the Warthog off the side of a cliff, which will absolutely kill these poor Marines. Like when they land, their spines will be crushed, their femurs will be snapped, and so even I think Xbox even posted some stuff kind of poking at themselves for that. But I thought the reveal was great. The main criticism I've seen from people is that it feels very Ubisoft-y open world stuff, where it looks like you're just going to have like main missions and side missions and random activities, and you're going to need to take over certain points to open up the map and do the Assassin's Creed tower thing. And admittedly, I'm a bit worried about that too. I'm kind of I'm open world game sick. I'm done. I'm kind of done with it at this point. I if you follow me on social media, you'll know I've been quite obsessed with the Mass Effect trilogy this year. And that has a lot to do with that, especially Mass Effect 2 and 3, but even 1, it has some open worldy stuff that's terrible, but it really, Mass Effect gave you such an impression of a giant interconnected world with different biomes and different places to go and different things to see, while still being fairly linear. And I understand that like modern games don't do that anymore, and that's fine. They the games do have to evolve, but there is there's a limit, and there's a saturation point too, where I think that's what we're seeing with people kind of talking about like Far Cry 6, and then the pushback to the Splinter Cell announcement about that Ubisoft is making a new Splinter Cell game. Well, the joke, or maybe it's not a joke that everyone's been saying, is like, well, it's just going to be another open open world, whatever experience. It's going to be Ghost Recon Breakpoint with Splinter Cell, which they kind of already did. So I understand those criticisms when we see the Halo preview. I have faith that, I think the key to a good open world experience that I've discovered, at least for me, subjectively, is I need the ability that if I want to just jump in and do the story and just play the game and beat the story and be like, cool. and do that without without being required to do a bunch of side bullshit, then that's fine. That's a thing I can enjoy. When I played Mass Effect Andromeda the first time, there's been a few other games where you can go in and just put your head down and do the thing, and and then that you aren't forced to grind on the side. I think that's the best way to do it. And then if you want to play a second time, or you just want to enjoy that, then you can get into it. You can dig into all the side missions, and you know the little secrets, or the crafting, or the grinding, all the things that you can do, but to make them kind of optional. And it's a big problem I've had with a game. Well, Ubisoft does it a lot with like level gating. So you'll have these main missions that you need to go through, but you'll complete one main mission and hit level 5, and but the next main mission is in an area that you either can't get to at all, or that you'll die instantly until you hit level 8, and you're only level 5. You need to be level 8, and so now you need to go do side missions, and grind in other ways to be able to just move on to that next story mission by doing things you don't want to do. And it's a big thing I didn't like about like Breakpoint and the last couple Assassin's Creeds and stuff like that. So I'm really hoping that Halo really gives you that experience of like, I want to say maybe Far Cry 5, I think, did a decent job of, I think that had levels, but you kind of could just go anywhere, if I remember correctly. And there's been a few games that have done that. And I really hope that's what happens with Halo, and that a lot of the concerns people have about Infinite won't come to fruition. From the bottom of my heart, hope that 343 has seen the issues people have had with open world games, especially Ubisoft ones, and are like, yep, we know people don't like this, so we won't do that. Instead, we'll do this. And hopefully their this is better, because you never know. But yeah, the Halo Infinite single player gameplay reveal I thought was great. And I'm really, really excited to play that. And to see if it will maybe take over as my game of the year, because that's going to be hard to do, which I'll talk about momentarily. First, we're going to talk about a couple pretty big Division updates. I try to prioritize these when they're big, because I'm sure a majority of the people who listen to me at this point are still probably Division fans, even if they're kind of like me and sort of taking a break. But there were two big bits of news. So one good-ish, and another not so good. Maybe. We'll see. So the first one is that we got a blog. We got a couple things, and so we got a blog detailing one of the big updates that's coming. But the update was that we're getting new Division 2 content in March, or February, in February of 2020, 2022. Geez, old Pete's, and that's cool. I think that's a little bit later than people were expecting when they put out that kind of vague timeline for all of the content that's coming, and everything Division related that's coming. I think people read a bit too much into that and got very, very attached to those dates, even though over the last year and a half, 2 years, I don't know how people haven't learned yet that you can't assume anything at this point, especially time frame wise. So we found out that the new Division 2 content that's going to include a new mode and other stuff, copyright, will come in February. And then in December, they're going to do some type of kind of like apparel event, and like a small thing. And then in January, they're going to do, leading up to this new content, a new season, or a new manhunt. It sounds like they're also going to do a PTS for the big title update that's coming, and that's something worth mentioning. Is they called this new content that's coming in February a title update. They did not call it a DLC, and so I'm assuming that means that it's going to be a free update to the game. It's which probably means two things. One, that's really cool that they aren't going to charge people to play this new content. Two, it's probably not going to be Warlords of New York. They did kind of say that they're expecting it to be the biggest title update they've ever done. But I hope what people read that as very carefully is that Warlords of New York was not a title update. It was a DLC. So they're not saying it's going to be bigger than Warlords, and I can pretty much guarantee it won't be. It's just that big of an expansion just probably isn't in the books for Division 2. I wish it was. I wish there was more like that coming, but the reality is it's probably not. So that's kind of what we know about that. They did detail in the blog the specialization changes that are coming. Essentially, they're revamping that whole system, and in that, they did talk about some PvP stuff and how specialization changes may impact PvP. I think people have taken that information and the talk about the PTS, and that they're assuming this new content may have some type of PvP element. It could. Honestly, if they're doing the PTS, I hope it does. Because if the PTS is just going to be, if this new content is going to be a PvE thing, then I really kind of don't like the PTSs. If they need people to do QA, they should use QA. If they need people to test like PvP mechanics, then I get it. You open that up to the public. So I really hope that this PTS will be focused on PvP stuff, because otherwise, if it's PvE and it's like a new mode that's PvE, all that people are going to do is just use it as early access to the content, and then they'll burn themselves out before the content even actually drops in February. So I really hope that whatever the PTS involves, it's limited to PvP testing, because I think it's always a pretty big bummer when people spend a couple weeks or whatever just grinding and streaming the crap out of a PTS, and then by the time the actual thing releases, it's not really that exciting anymore, and people have already kind of gone to the dark side. So we'll have to wait and see, though. The other bit of Division news that we got this week was not officially released, at least not like purposefully for this game, but we found out that Heartland may not be in our hands for a while. So we know that Heartland got announced a while ago. There were lots of leaks and talks about a test that happened earlier in the year, and then it's been pretty much radio silent and pretty much zero information. And I really wish I was allowed to comment on how little information there's been, but I'll leave it at that. And now, during an investor call, a few Ubisoft games were talked about being pushed to the next fiscal year, and it included Heartland, which means that it's coming at after April 2022 at the earliest. So that's a thing. That's a lot longer than I expected, and it could come as late as March of 2023. My honest guess is it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. If just kind of reading the tea leaves and stuff, it wouldn't surprise me if Heartland, we may get it maybe in like late summer, early fall of next year. And in a delay like that wouldn't be as disappointing or whatever to people if I think we got any kind of information officially, either about that or just about the game in general. I mean, people, people have basically gotten to see a couple crappy leaked videos of maybe some stuff that, maybe didn't represent the game for what it really is. And then it's been pretty much nothing since then. So Heartland is weird, man, because for me, if Heartland released like 2 years ago, it maybe would have been out in time, the type of game that it might be. My concern is that even if Heartland released this year, I'm afraid it's late. It's just too late. And now there's talk that may not come out till next year, or maybe even the year after that. Like by the time it comes out, it might just be a figment of our imagination to a point, like you really do have to wonder, like at what point, Well, here's a thing to think about if you're a Division fan. So we know that this illustrious studio, this incredible studio in Red Storm, has probably been working on Heartland since like late 2019. So it's 2 years now. We assume they're going to work on it for another year before it comes out, and then and maybe longer. And so, I ask, like, do we sit around and same with this Division 2 content that's coming? At what point do we look around and say, like, what if they would have just been working on the next division instead this whole time? What if we use these multiple teams and all these resources and stuff, um, on just making a new game, and like, instead of these, this free to play side project that we don't know anything about yet, that, looking at Ubisoft's record, is, doesn't bode well for it. And then this content for Division 2 that's going to be, that's exciting, and I can't wait to play it, but is probably not going to bring back millions of people, thousands, maybe a couple 100,000, to come back to the game and play. At some point, I think you have to kind of wonder, like, well, is it worth it? Are these two projects worth it, or should they have maybe just tried to move on to the next big thing? Um, I think that's a question we'll probably revisit in a year from now, when these things are out and we decide, you know, if it was worth it or not. So we'll have to wait and see. The next topic for today is the Guardians of the Galaxy game. So this was a game that, I remember seeing it, and it got a lot of mixed kind of reaction when it first got announced. Um, People were kind of weird about it. I think that had a lot to do with the fallout of the Marvel Avengers game, and people being none too happy with that, and the same publisher being involved in both of them. And as things got closer and we saw more footage, I was really looking at, like, man, this like looks really cool. Like, this looks fun. It looks like it looks like they're really catching the feel of the movies, which are my favorite Marvel movies, and they're making a game where you can play it. And then a bunch of reviews came out, and they were overall really positive. And I heard people saying things like, it's like Mass Effect Light. It's, it's this, it's that. And really the only bad thing I heard about Guardians was that the combat wasn't like super satisfying. So I bought it. I bought it full price, and I played it, and I beat it last night. If you're listening to this later, I beat it on Friday night, Friday the 29th. And I'm here to say that, I mean, right now it's my game of the year. It was so good. It was really cool because, much like the movies that they put out, I'm not a big comic guy, so I can't really speak to it from that view. But it was really cool how, like, in the movies, it has this kind of lighthearted thing, has a banging soundtrack. I didn't stream the game because I knew I was missing out on the soundtrack, and I would get DMCA'd if I played the soundtrack. Um, it's fun. The humor is excellent in it. The writing of the dialogue is great. The story takes you to the places that, the first like third of the game, you're kind of like, okay, I get it. I can tell what we're doing here and how this is going to play out. And then about halfway in, your mind just gets like blown. And then that just keeps happening. The graphics are insane. I played it on a Series X. It looks so good. I was really impressed with the facial animations and a lot of that stuff. Things like the hair and stuff wasn't perfect, but it was pretty good, and it was certainly better than, most of the other things I've seen recently. I think games like The Last of Us and a lot of the Sony titles have kind of that's like their thing, is that they have like amazing facial animations and stuff. And I think the Guardians game like butts up against that. It may not quite be their quality, but it's pretty good. And that, combined with the great dialogue, I mean, the game has moments of like super big dad jokes and like really lame, like kind of goofy stuff. And then there's like multiple moments where I like teared up while I was playing it, because it was like very touching, and very emotional, and really well set up. There's a lot in the game, that there's a lot of setups and payoffs, and most of them work really well. Um, My only real complaint is actually I didn't mind the combat. I thought the combat was fun. I did cheat a little bit by I saw enough people say that they didn't like the content that I played on the easiest difficulty because my thought was like, okay, well, if the combat's not really that fun, I want to get through it as quickly as possible and feel like a god, and so I can get to the story beats. And overall, that worked out really well. And I didn't breeze through it as like I thought I would. There were multiple moments that I died a few times and had to figure it out, and I couldn't just blow through it. So even on the easiest level, it still was a little bit challenging, which is what I wanted. I wasn't looking for an ultimate gaming experience. I was looking to experience a cool story, and that's what I got. And I really, I've seen kind of multiple opinions on this. Like, are the characters in the game better than the characters in the movies? And man, it's kind of hard not to argue that every single character in the game is more endearing and better than the ones in the movies. And I love the characters from the movies. I think Chris Pratt is a great Star Lord, but the guy in this game, the voice actor and the way they animated him and stuff, like he's awesome, and he's like a lot nicer. Like he seems like a little bit nicer guy, a little more sincere. Um, it's really cool. It's just such a great game. My only real complaint after finishing it is there's 16 chapters that you play through. Some of them are very quick, and then some of them aren't. That some of them are too long, and they're mostly made too long by um extra combat encounters that just didn't feel necessary. Like they just kind of threw them in to drag you along for another 5 or 10 minutes. Like, I'm sure while they design these games, they kind of keep track of how long it's going to take like the average person to play it, and I assume they throw some of this stuff in sometimes just to keep you playing, right? Um, and so yeah, my main complaint is that there were parts that drug on a bit. But overall, man, just such a good game. There's some fun puzzles, nothing that like will blow your mind or will like completely stump you for like a whole night. You'll figure out the puzzles pretty quickly, and they use a lot of voice lines to kind of keep you to kind of keep you going. And if you do seem stuck, they'll kind of help you along a few different ways. But man, just so good. So I highly, highly, highly suggest. Um, for me, it was worth paying 60 right now. If you want to wait and get it for 20, 30 bucks off in a few months or whatever, I think most people should play this game eventually. If you think you're into it and you like what you've seen, definitely buy it right now and play it. Um, I wouldn't say I'm like super excited to play it again. It's the type of game I could see myself like next year jump back into and do like the new game plus or something. So probably doesn't have a ton of replayability. So, and I think my run through took 15 to 20 hours. So, if you think 15 or 20 hours is worth 60 bucks, and for a like the last like three chapters, I just had a grin on my face the entire time. Like, and I had a smile on my face the whole time I was playing it, but especially as I could feel it was like wrapping up. It's a really charming game is what I would describe it as. So so that's my review of Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm highly impressed with it, extremely good. And I think if you don't want to pay full price for it now, you need to play it at some point, unless it's just 100% not your type of game. So there's that. Another kind of review is before I did Guardians of the Galaxy, I did a second playthrough of Mass Effect Andromeda. So if you don't know about Mass Effect or Andromeda itself, the Mass Effect that most people talk about is the original trilogy that came out between 2007 and 12. Um, which is, while they're flawed games for sure, is for many people, maybe the best trilogy of games ever made. And individually, people, there's a lot of people who liked those games so much that either as a whole or as individuals are some people's favorite games ever. And I get it. I'm in that boat. So, they had BioWare, who's under EA, had a lot of success with those games. And then in 2017, they released the next one. So the thing about the first three games in the trilogy is they were all released in the 360 PS3 era. So they were pretty limited. Mass Effect 3 looks pretty good and has some really modern gameplay, but the levels are pretty small. There's not much open world stuff for better or worse. You can definitely tell they were maxing out 100% what the 360 and PS3 gen could handle. And so Andromeda was really exciting for people. It was a IP that lots of people loved, and it was on the next gen of systems. This was the Xbox One and PS4 generation, and I think people were like, "It's happening." We're finally getting like a next gen Mass Effect. And then it came out, and then a bunch of stories came out, and we found out that it got rushed. It wasn't really made by the A team at BioWare. It didn't, do that well, and it had some major technical issues. And then it got canceled. And then it came out. The game came out, and they fixed it up a decent amount, and then they just stopped developing it. There were, I think, 3 DLCs planned for Andromeda. I believe that Andromeda was meant to be the first of 3 whole games, not just DLCs, and all of that got scrapped, every bit of it. The irony, if you ever read some of those old articles like I did, is they didn't develop the DLCs or the following games, and I quote, "We are going to focus on Anthem to make it the best experience we can make it," which is ironic or sad, depending on how you look at it, because if you don't know, Anthem essentially went through the same thing. It came out, it was in really rough shape. It wasn't what people expected, and it never quite lived up to it. And lo and behold, Anthem ended up getting canceled, or they stopped development on it. They didn't release any of the DLCs. They didn't do anything that they were planning to do. And I assume Anthem was initially planned to be, for there to be multiple Anthem games. So yeah, real weird. So there's lots of reasons that happened. Like I said before, a lot of the blame goes to, well, with Anthem, they did have the A team in a lot of ways. They just were literally making decisions about that game like months before it came out, which should have been settled years before it came out. But with Andromeda, the big issue was it was the first game, or one of the first, that they put out on Frostbite, which is EA's engine that they're trying to throw everything on. The engine is made by DICE, who are the makers of Battlefield, who, when they were purchased by EA, DICE, EA said, "Hey, we've got an in-house engine. It's great. We're going to put all of our games on it." And that's why over the years, you've seen FIFA, even the sports games, FIFA, NHL, Madden have all been switched to that engine. And EA basically forced BioWare to switch to it as well, which meant that Andromeda was made on an engine that they were completely unfamiliar with. I've read about it both with BioWare and Anthem. They literally had to take Frostbite and essentially build a ton of new systems to fit what they need, because Frostbite is it was a first person shooter engine, and engines are flexible. They can do all kinds of things. That's why, like with Ubisoft, Massive has the Snowdrop engine that Division 1 and 2 were built on. But then the South Park, the Butthole game is on there too, and so is a VR game. So there's all kind. So engines are very flexible, but it definitely seems like BioWare struggled heavily with porting Mass Effect, because it meant that they couldn't just, because I believe Mass Effect, the trilogy, was on Unreal 3, I believe, at the time that Andromeda came out. It would have been Unreal 4 engine that they would have used, but instead they had to use Frostbite. And so if they would have made the game in Frostbite or in Unreal 4, they would have been able to just move over a lot of assets and then upscale them, make them better. But instead, I'm sure that they were able to move some models and stuff over, but when it came to a lot of their systems, for everything, they had to start from scratch, and that obviously hurt the development of that game. Now, the whole point of this spiel is for me to talk about my second playthrough of Andromeda. The first time I played it was after the first time I beat the Legendary Edition. First time I'd ever played the trilogy, and I jumped right into Andromeda, like saying, I want some more Mass Effect. And the thing in hindsight, I realize is that I didn't know that much about Mass Effect when I played Andromeda the first time. The first time I played the trilogy, I'm pretty sure I beat it all in like 30 hours, which really like one of the games should take you that long. And I like I took a highway straight through all three of them and just beat them. And I didn't really get into the systems. I didn't really understand the story. And so when I played Andromeda, I was lost. I didn't know what was going on because Andromeda is very much, at least what they attempted to do, was to take the best from the three trilogy games and try to kind of mash it all together, like take out all the good parts and make a game with that. Um, and and they're successful in some ways and they failed pretty miserably in others. And so the first time I played it, I basically just burned through all the main stories. This is what I talked about before about Halo. Andromeda, you can the game scales to you, so you can just do all of the main missions and you can beat that game in probably like 10 hours, if that. Um, and that's what I did. And I left it like that's okay, I guess. I didn't have any romances. I didn't do any side missions. I didn't do loyalty missions. I didn't do anything extra. I did all the main missions. In that game you can do 4 settlements on planets because you're a colonist in a new galaxy, Andromeda. I did one. I did the one you have to do, and I didn't settle any other worlds. I just blew through the game, and I thought it was okay. I was like, it's kind of Mass Effect. And then since then, I've replayed the trilogy 3 more times, um, which leads me to now. And so I understand the world a lot more. And I've did a little more research on Andromeda and kind of read articles about the best way to play it and the things you should do and shouldn't bother with. And this time I played it, and it's a man. There's a really good game just trying to claw out of that game, out of Andromeda. I did still have a lot of technical issues. I played on a Series X. It is locked at 30 FPS. There's no FPS boost on it, which is annoying because another BioWare game from 2014, 3 years earlier, has FPS boost, Dragon Age Inquisition. So I really hope maybe that we'll see that happen. But Andromeda, when I played it through more seriously and more deliberately, I really discovered a game that had a lot of heart, and that, while they didn't really find the formula from the trilogy and it didn't really like tug at my heartstrings like that exactly, they definitely, like, they were so close. There were so many features of Andromeda that they like almost got it. Almost like they had the right idea, and whether it was development or a lack of experience or capability or whatever, they couldn't quite follow through and finish it. But there's so much about that game that it's like it's so close because there's a lot of really satisfying things about the game. This time I did romance someone. I romanced kind of Vetra and Cora at the same time, and then you eventually have to like pick one or the other. And the Cora romance was great. I thought it was really cool and it was really sweet. And and then I improved my. What's cool about that game is that in the trilogy you can have romances, but then there's some that if you're in a romance with one character, that you kind of disappear from the radar from other ones. Well, in Andromeda you can romance a character, but then it turns into a thing with all the other ones that you can like improve your friendship with them, so you don't romance them anymore because you're entangled, but you can still have moments with them that improve your friendship and improve your affinity to them. And by the end of the game, man, I was much more into it than I was the first time. And I did all the settlements you could do. I did a lot of side missions, all the ones that seemed interesting to me. Um, I upgraded my rider. Well, in hindsight, the first time I played Andromeda, I never upgraded my. I used the first weapon you get for the entire game. I used the first set of armor you get for the entire game. This time I did a lot of upgrading and customizing and stuff like that. And Andromeda is, if you can get it cheap, it's a very good game to just pick up. You just need to go into it knowing it didn't get finished. And it's, you know, it's sad. And they abandoned it for Anthem, which is its own set of irony. And and what's such a bummer is, I guess when I beat it the first time, I must have beat it and turned it off and never looked at it again. Because this time when I beat it, there's like a post game, there's like an epilogue, and it's great. It's really cool. And I didn't see that the first time I played, so I must have just like turned it off and never looked at it. And then even in the epilogue, there's a lot of cool stuff, and you really get to, what's a real bummer about the epilogue is that they very obviously, there was a DLC that they literally talk about in the epilogue, like, and you can even go check on it. And what was meant to happen, I assume, is that the game was supposed to come out. You get to the epilogue, or you get to the post game or the end game or whatever, and it would like remind you, like, hey, there's this thing that you need to go check out, but we're not ready yet. And that was the end game justification. And then what was going to happen eventually is they were going to release that DLC, and you were going to get like an alert in the game, like, hey, we're ready for you to go check out this thing. And it just never happens because they stopped developing the game. So, man, I mean, there's still a lot bad about the game. That there's definitely, you know, the technical side of it, I think, is still pretty rough, and um, nothing like super duper game breaking. But my biggest issue with it is that it's like it's so close to being awesome, and it just can't quite get there. Um, and that's fine, you know, that's okay. But it's a bummer because you can see that if that game, I really think if they would have developed it on Unreal 4, if they would have given it more priority with their developers and leadership, I think if all of those things would have come together better, it would have been probably a pretty good game. But you know, that's where we are. So, and I've said this, but I actually said this after the first time I played, but I say it even more now. The funny thing is as much as much trouble as that game had, it actually still makes me really excited for the next one, because um, the things that they, whether they were successful or not, the ways that they tried to modernize Mass Effect and in Andromeda, which they failed a lot of the ways, but you still see what they were trying to do. Makes me really excited for the next one. There's rumors that they're going to be developing the next one on Unreal 5. So they'll be back kind of in their wheelhouse. And they've brought back a ton of the OG developers from the first three games. And it really seems like they're trying to put in honest effort to capture that magic and push the game forward. So it's kind of like if they try to keep the soul of that game, but also advance the tech and the mechanics of it, the way they tried to with Andromeda and kind of failed. But if they can successfully do it this time and fully, you know, really, you know, go all in, it makes me super excited for the next game. So, uh, unfortunately, we're probably gonna have to wait and see. N7 Day is coming up, which I've talked about a bit, and I really hope that maybe they announce an Andromeda FPS boost on Xbox, because that doesn't involve any work by BioWare. That's an Xbox thing that they do algorithmically. I think that's the right way to say that, and it's all their tech. So that would be a cool announcement. I would love to see that, because I would probably eventually play it again, because the 30 frames, I hate to be this guy now, but I'm this guy now. 30 frames kills my eyes. It does not, it's hard. It's hard to watch. It doesn't feel good after you've gotten used to at least 60. So I would love to see that. And I hope that they maybe give us another teaser trailer. We got a teaser last year that I think gave us some pretty definitive answers about what's happening in the next Mass Effect. And I really hope that they give us something this year. I don't think they will. I think it's more realistic that they'll do another teaser next year, because they're supposed to start full development on the next Mass Effect, like actual active development, in 2023. And so something tells me that right now they're in pre-production, and probably have been for a year or two, and well, probably at least a year, but probably two. And you know, we'll see. But Andromeda, it's worth a shot. uh, if it's on Game Pass, yeah, well, it's on Game Pass Ultimate. If you can get it through that, I would check it out, and try to give it some time. Give it like 5 hours, and if you still don't like it, then obviously quit. But um, Yeah, that's my advice. Okay, a couple of quick topics here at the end. We'll talk about God of War coming to PC. So we found out that God of War that came out in 2018, I believe, is coming to PC soon. And the typical, extremely vocal minority of Sony PlayStation fans threw a literal fit on the internet and screamed and cried about this happening. If you're not aware, because I'm sure a lot of the people who follow me are probably Xbox people or PC people. Um, as some of you may or may not know, Xbox for a long time now has been releasing their exclusive quote unquote games day and date on PC and Xbox, and that's what's happening from here on out. For the most part, I think there's a few exceptions, but not many. And Xbox people don't care. It's fine. It's at the end of the day, it's I think a lot of Xbox people consider an Xbox just a proprietary PC. At least that's how I look at my Series X. Um, my PC now is a little bit faster than my Series X, but not by much. And there's just things I like to play on mouse and keyboard and PC more, and things I like on my Xbox more. And I don't really care which one it comes out on, which doesn't seem to be the case for at least a small number of Sony, but very loud number of Sony fans who it seems like the main concern is like, why would I buy a PlayStation if I can just play it on PC? But then, like, just like what I just said, I have both, and I probably play a lot more on my Xbox. It's just simpler. It's just easier. PCs, like it or not, are just more complicated. And when you can have a driver screw everything up randomly one day. You have to keep up with video cards and RAM and processors and all this stuff and all of the things that goes along with those, like drivers and patches and all this stuff. And um, it's interesting because from a fan perspective, from these relatively small number of people who get really upset about this, it's like a weird console war thing. Like they say like, well, all of our games are on the console, which means our console's better than theirs because they share their games. They have to. And it's like, well, now we're doing it. And it's like a threat to their like weird console war crap, right? Um, I will say though that um Sony, I think, sends a weird message because they don't release their games day and date. They release their games on PC like 2 or 3 years later, and and I think that is a very clear indication that Sony still like really, 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 really cares about selling more consoles than Microsoft. Um, I'm not saying that Microsoft doesn't care about winning the console sale war or whatever. I'm sure they would love to sell more than Sony, but it seems like it's not as big of a priority. And it seems like the PlayStation is really, really dedicated to selling more PlayStations than Xboxes because of this move. Like they're happy to take the PC money later, but they know that they'll sell more PlayStations if they release these tentpole games like God of War, Last of Us, um, Horizon. Now, they if they did day and date on those games, PC and PlayStation, not as many people would buy PlayStations to play those games. They would just use their PC, but then they would probably sell more games. An example I saw that someone made was about Days Gone, in that if Days Gone had released day and date, a lot of people would have bought it on PC and PlayStation 4, and it probably would have sold more copies than it ever did. But what happened is that it came out on PlayStation 4 to mixed reception. And then 2, 3 years later, when it came out on PC, I'm under the impression it didn't sell very well because by then people kind of knew what it was about and weren't really into it. And if they release a day and date, now I'm not saying this is a good thing, but they can kind of take advantage of the goodwill people have towards PlayStation games. So I don't know. I think the whole thing's weird. PlayStation has they are publishing their PC games under a new PlayStation PC label. I didn't know before they were publishing their PC games through their mobile publisher, which is really weird. But I guess they didn't want to. I don't know. I don't know why they were doing that. But now like they do have a PlayStation PC thing. So I think eventually PlayStation will do day and date with PC. I think it probably won't be till the PlayStation 6. I think they will go this whole generation and still really push like if you want to play our games day one, you have to buy one of our consoles, because here in a year or two, it'll be easier to buy them and they'll be more available. And here's the thing to think about: those systems came out in 2020. There's a really good chance that 2023, 2024, Xbox and PlayStation puts out a pro version of the current systems. Like there will probably be, oh goodness, I don't even know what Xbox will name it, because the Xbox had Xbox One and then the One X, but now we have the Series X. So they're gonna do like a Series X Pro or something. I don't know. And then the PS5 Pro sounds likely. And so, we'll probably have those in a couple of years or a year and a half or so. And everyone will do the rat race to get that. And I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, I think PlayStation eventually goes day and date on PC, but I think it's going to be another 6 or 7 years at least. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay, a little story here. This is kind of old, but I still wanted to touch on it. Xbox Game Pass, we found out that they, in the last year, had a 37% growth of Xbox Game Pass, which is pretty massive. That's a pretty big deal. And what was funny is apparently their target was 48%. And so what was really interesting was seeing the reporting on this, and it was very telling of where the reporter stood on Xbox, because if they were more like, I think, neutral or pro Xbox, they would report like, holy crap, Game Pass grew by 37%. Like, that's wild. That's so much. And if maybe they were a little less Xbox positive, you saw it being reported as, well, they missed their target by 9 points. What a bunch of losers. And through some podcasts and some stuff I've read about, is this 48% target. Apparently Microsoft almost always sets targets that it's probably not going to hit, because they expect a lot. They're friggin' Microsoft, like them or not, they are an exceptional company, and they're very financially viable, and are very successful. And you don't reach that status by having low goals. And so I mean, I think the story is that they had 37% growth. I think that's pretty wild. That's a lot, because they already had a large install base of Game Pass. And I'll be and one big thing people talked about is the reason it probably was short by 9 points was almost certainly Halo Infinite being delayed. That's their tentpole game. Now, whether it still will be after Infinite comes out, we'll have to wait and see. But the simple fact is that there haven't really been too many like real tentpole releases yet on exclusively the Xbox, which comes with Game Pass, to show for it yet. So you have to think about what's coming. Like, we just had Age of Empires, we had the Microsoft Flight Simulator. We have Halo coming. We have Forza Horizon 5 coming. We have the Hellblade sequel coming. We have all these other games, not to mention like Starfield next year. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if in the next year and a half they see a huge explosion of Game Pass, because all of those games, you just pay your Game Pass subscription and you get them all. And it's going to take those heavy hitting exclusives for them to finally, like, to really see that growth that they're looking for from Game Pass. And I think it's coming. So. And then the last bit here, I'll talk about Riders Republic really quickly. I do want to thank Ubisoft, and I'll be very clear that they did give me a code for free to play this. I had checked out a couple of the earlier tests and betas and stuff they did. I've seen some reviews for this game that are very glowing. Skill Up did a review where he was very positive on this game. I've never really been like a Steep or SSX or Extreme Winter Sports or Extreme, X Games type of dude. This game just didn't connect with me at all. They did a bunch. There's a bunch of the onboarding is just cringy to me and really rough. The controls, I think, feel awful, and for a game that, like, you're supposed to be doing tricks and all this stuff, like, I really feel like that the controls, like, are like the most important thing. It's a pretty game. It's extremely expansive. It's a freaking gigantic game. It's a hardcore Ubisoft open world in a very big way. They do some creative stuff with, like, most of the people you're racing against or that you see are ghosts of actual people. So you may not actually be playing at the same time as them, but their activity during their play sessions has been recorded and you're seeing it as if they are there, which is pretty cool. And some other games have done that too, but it seems like they're doing it at the largest scale I've seen so far. Um, I don't know, man. I really think that Riders Republic would have been a perfect free to play game. It's so funny that Ubisoft is hitting this free to play thing so hard, and they missed it with this game. I really think that if they like up the monetization a lot of like apparel and stuff like that, and they would have made this free to play, it would probably be a pretty big deal, especially if they put in some like really competitive modes that were kind of like a almost like a Fall Guys type thing or something, because some of the races are like that. But there's no like sense to it. But if you could like make your own lobbies or like actually legitimately compete against other people who are currently playing and have some type of crown or something that you can win, um, I really feel like they missed out on a pretty big opportunity there. But I don't know. It's just it's not my thing. I appreciate the code. I really wanted to like it. I was really interested in this last year, and then as more and more came out about it, and after I touched it a few times, I just don't. I don't know. It's not for me. If you like those type of games, it's probably amazing. But if you're like trying to get into that type of game, it didn't capture me, and that's all I can say about it. The next part here is we have a couple listener questions. From the first one here is from Pizza Morgue. It's a bit of a long one here. With journalists admitting fatigue with the Far Cry franchise before even talking about Far Cry 6, do you agree with this practice? All reviews are subjective, but the fatigue is singular to the reviewer. So is it relevant when weighing the merits of the title? Yeah, I think that's a fair point to bring up. Because in theory, a game reviewer should review each game in a like a quarantine zone, right? So Far Cry 6 should just be reviewed as Far Cry 6. It shouldn't matter if it's similar to 5 or 4 or whatever, the other ones. And I'm honestly pretty mixed on it because especially because like imagine like for me to review Breakpoint and not consider Wildlands, to review Valhalla and not consider Odyssey, to review um, Division One and not two, even though I actually think they made quite a bit of progression there. I don't really think there is copy and paste as those other examples. I don't know. I think your point is fair that it is maybe unfair to the game because it seems like a lot of people like Far Cry 6. But it always comes with the caveat of, yeah, Far Cry 6 is a lot of fun, but it's just more of the same. Um, I think if I was reviewing games, I would feel like it's fair to mention this fatigue, um, because I think it matters. On the other hand, it probably doesn't matter as much to the regular player, a normal gamer, right? Because they aren't constantly being subjected to games, so like the average reviewer is probably playing 20, 30, 40, 50 games a year, where the average gamer probably plays what, like maybe 5 or 10 at the most. That's probably on the high side, and so that fatigue may not be shared by the average consumer. So I think that, I guess my diplomatic answer would be that I think it's fair for them to mention the fatigue, but that maybe they could be more cognizant of maybe the fatigue impacts them more than the people reading. And maybe they can be more expressive of that, and to be more like, hey, I understand that maybe this is just me, but this is what I'm feeling, because I think they should say how they feel. But then maybe also qualify it a little bit that, and maybe you didn't play Far Cry 5. And so this will feel very new to you. Or maybe this is your first Far Cry ever. Or maybe you did play all those, but you just like that formula. Like those are all things that can all be true. So I think it's a fair point to bring up. I overall think that it's okay what they do. But I would say that it would be maybe more fair for them to be more upfront about it, or maybe be more thoughtful of how others may feel about it. Second question here comes from Master Prime. Master Prime had three questions, but the other two I've either already answered or don't really apply to me. But a very simple question: hype for BF 2042? And my answer is yes, and that's it. But for real, yeah, I am hyped for 2042. I had a ton of fun. I was talking to someone about this through DMs last night about how 2042. I actually much preferred my experience on that on my Series X. I tested the PC and the Series X version during the last open test, and I've always been a PC guy for first-person shooters. And something about it just felt really good on my controller. And I've actually canceled my Origin pre-order. I'm gonna buy it on Xbox. I If you have asked me that 6 months ago, I would have said no freaking way. I play Battlefield on computers. Like that's what Bond does, you know. But sure enough, here we are, and I'm probably gonna play it on my Series X. It just felt better. It's hard to explain. They've done a good job of making it very playable on a controller. And I was holding my own very well against PC players because I have a Series X. So I was doing crossplay with PC players multiple times. I was the only one on an Xbox in my lobby. So I don't know. I felt like I did really well and I had a lot more fun with it. And so I am very hyped for the game in general. I'm a little skeptical of the mode that they've talked about, the whatever it's called. And then that portal mode, it just seems like a little gimmicky to me, but maybe it's going to be really cool. But just the main multiplayer, I mean, there's nothing like Battlefield multiplayer. It's a unique brand of multiplayer. You can't just jump in and have fun. You have to learn it. You have to learn the flow. But it's a blast, and I really like it. So yes, hype for 2042, absolutely. The last thing here, some content updates. Thanks to your guys' support and everything, I am actually going to be buying a new webcam soon. I was really debating on saving up for like a lot longer to do a DSLR. I'm just never going to be doing this stuff seriously enough for that. So I am going to upgrade my C920 to a Brio, a Logitech on both of them. And I should be doing that here in the next month or two. It just has some features that will make it easier for me to do like some more narrative videos and stuff. And it'll just increase the quality of the podcast video as well as my stream. Someone made a really good point of, I don't know if we want to see this face in higher resolution, but here you go. You're getting it whether you like it or not is how it's probably gonna work. And yeah, so that's what's coming. I'll mention again the Extra Life PSA. You can donate straight to Extra Life. Look up Bond Diesel. You can buy my merch, and I'll donate $5 for every merch item that gets sold. And on Patreon, if you join, I will match your first month. So if you join the $10 tier, I'll donate $10 to Extra Life for the first time. So check those things out. And that's where I'm going to start wrapping it up. So I do stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/Bondiesel, and I post the podcast, stream VODs, and narrative game videos to YouTube. You can look me up as the Bondiesel. You can check out my Twitter at Bondiesel for my musings, as well as at the EchoCast if you just want gaming tweets and podcast related tweets. If you want some cool EchoCast or Bondiesel merch, please check out streamlabs.com/Bondiesel/merch. And you can buy some of that cool stuff. I just updated a bunch. There is some like legitimately cool stuff on there. If you like coffee mugs, I'm your man. And that's all I have. So until next time.